I was born into the community with violence, drugs. That's what you walk out and see when you 4 or 5 years old. You know, I remember the first time I'm seeing blood on the sidewalk from somebody getting shot. I lived on St. Clair. A guy got shot in his foot, and it was blood on the ground, shell casings. So it was like continuous violence, continuous dysfunction. Still to this day, you know what I'm saying? It's like it don't never go away once you're born into it unless you help yourself get out of it. You're gonna see somebody die. Your friend's gonna die. You know what I'm saying? One day you see them, one day they gone. Like, it hurt inside to even talk about it. You can't fold. Growing up witnessing violence, I found myself making that my go-to. I was resorting to violence because that's all I knew. That's all I ever seen. You know what I'm saying? Family, friends. You mad? Let's fight.
When I think of youth violence, the most important thing I have to say is if they had something else to do, I think they might have done it. Some people don't want to go into that.
You know, the thing that gets me is when I hear adults who work with youth label youth as being at risk. I believe that when our young people have a voice, they can learn to help and heal themselves.
To me, your environment plays a big role on who you are and how you grow up.
When you have shots fired in a neighborhood and you consider that an individual has actually seen another person get shot, upwards of 75% of kids have either seen or know someone who's been shot. That's a lot of trauma. Kids learn it, kids feel it, kids are unable to address with it or cope with it. And so now when they are confronted with a conflict, with a struggle, the only learned response that they have is to resort to violence.
I do have an experience where a couple of my family members have gotten shot. One of my cousins, Jer, he got shot and he had a baby on the way. And my cousin Jalen, he got shot and he was in the hospitals for like 7 months, I think. And that was just very scary.
It's not that we have a consistent issue with youth violence. In fact, months can pass without any major incidences. And then what we see happen is we'll have an outbreak of youth violence.
Then you see the trend of, I don't have this at home, so I'm going to go look for it somewhere else. It seems as though they're so desensitized. That's almost like we're walking around as zombies. You know what I'm saying? Nothing happens, affects us, when in reality it should affect you.
When an individual is hurt and they have not learned how to handle those feelings, or perhaps the frustration or the anger that accompanies the feeling of hurt, then the tendency is to resort to violence.
So when the young people that we serve, especially the teenagers, we hear them talk about the violence in their neighborhood. They see it on a regular basis, sometimes every day, sometimes every week, and they bring that information back to the programs that we provide.
I think that when you live in an impoverished neighborhood and you live in an area of lack of resources, you're going to experience trauma at every turn. Whether, again, it's the lack of supports, whether it's the images that you see, whether it's what you don't have access to. You're constantly in a state of trauma and shock. And I think that your brain gets stuck there.
When we examine the issue of domestic violence in the home, and you have a child present that has either witnessed, experienced, even felt the emotional and the physical trauma of that violence, that child, if you leave them unchecked, they grow up with the idea that this is how you're supposed to resolve problems.
With children who have experienced violence, either personally or within a family, or are violent themselves, they are violent because they have begun to shut down their senses. You can't hit somebody if you feel their pain. You just can't. There's no empathy. The empathy is gone. And they begin to shut down their emotions. And if we shut down our emotions, we shut down our learning, because everything we learn comes in through our senses. So the arts are the perfect way to help children to open those senses back up, begin to heal those emotions, and then begin to learn as a child that did not experience violence.
The only thing I ever noticed was after I got done fighting or being in an argument or anything heated, that I feel real bad after. But when I was creating this art, I was really in my inner self. I was really pulling this out of me. And then when I look at it, this is amazing. I didn't know I had this in me.
And so when we're talking about youth in particular who see things and they don't have logic skills to process it, the visual arts become important because it gives them a different place to process it. When you're out in the field working with youth, they've witnessed a lot of things without safety and security around them. And so it becomes important to build that therapeutic relationship where they find a safe place to explore it.
I think we have to be attuned to the broad nature of violence in the community and as it impacts kids and families. And so it's not just physical violence.
Well, the things that make me feel safe is when I can express myself, which is why I love the arts so much.
I grew up in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. For a lot of people that don't know, Chagrin Falls is predominantly white. So I spent most of my upbringing as one of very few minorities in my school environment. So as you can imagine, I endured a lot of racism. I endured a lot of prejudice. People just genuinely not understanding me. Seeing the N-word written on walls, that contributed to my depression in feeling isolated. No one understood what I was going through. And then why I would be angry at certain things going on, I felt alone. But I wasn't seeking any type of mental health. I didn't know if I was depressed. I just felt bad about myself.
It's like the worst thing that someone could do is make you not love yourself.
And if you think about trauma, like if a bridge blew up in front of you, you'd be driving up to that bridge, you couldn't go forward, right? That bridge is always there. The pieces are always rubble on the floor, and it's the same thing in your brain when it processes the trauma. You get stuck. And so we have to figure out a way for them to turn left or right on that, off of that road to the next path, and art gives them that opportunity to literally build neural pathways in their brain to do that because they can visually recreate what was going on during that trauma.
Emotional impact of violence is a negative, but the emotional impact of the art is a positive. So it has a way of balancing children and people to feel better about their ability and about themselves.
But I feel like if we had more accessible programs in the community where they didn't have to travel far, they can just walk to, or they can actually afford to go there, that it would definitely change the culture, because it's a lot of children out there that are very artistic, but they don't have a place to allow it to happen and take place, and they don't have anybody to nurture it.
And so art programs in the community and school are so vital, I believe, to understanding what creative outscape they might have.
But what we find is that when you offer individuals an opportunity for self-expression, we find that tensions are reduced, stress is reduced.
The arts have a way for helping people interpret what's going on around them. That's important to the discussion of safety.
Objectively Reasonable was a play about the community response to Tamir Rice's shooting, November 22nd, 2014.
We see a lot of community-based arts organizations that are very focused on helping create moments for people to have those experiences.
What's lacking in our neighborhoods is the ability for individuals, young and old, to know how to in a healthy manner and in an effective manner, express themselves.
And when you see someone who looks just like you getting shot for no reason or getting in trouble and they didn't do anything, it makes you feel like, did me or my family or did someone do something wrong?
Art was my way to stop worrying about what was going on around me and not get into it. Because if I didn't do art, I don't know what I would have gotten into. I just knew that every time I took a break from art, I saw how easy it was for myself to get into things I had no business doing.
I am art, a citizen of the world. We are part of one another. We will go forward, listening to and loving one another. I will play my part in making the world a better place. This is my place.
I think that the arts will help put things in perspective in regards to what's really happening.
If I didn't have music, if I didn't have my artistic expression, I don't know how I would be able to kind of channel certain feelings.
It's really starting to take some of the weight off your shoulders, because it's like you got something to go to. You got a go-to move, you know what I'm saying? You could write, you could do some photography. You know what I'm saying? Writing, when you got a lot on your mind, on your chest, but you don't want to go to that person and spaz out on them, but you can spaz out on that pen and paper, it's like life-saving.
And if arts does anything, it should teach thinking, empathy, and give children hope. That's what it does at its very best.